A few hours before the zombie virus outbreak, I was trapped at school. I sent a message about stockpiling supplies in the class group chat and then rushed to the supermarket with my roommates. In the apocalypse, I didn't dare to make too much noise. Low-key survival is the way to go in the end times. June 30th, sunny. My mom suddenly called me. She told me to immediately buy some supplies and then stay hidden in the dormitory, no matter what. My heart sank, and I realized something was seriously wrong. My parents are researchers. They never act on rumors without any signs. They urgently told me that a zombie virus had broken out in the city, and it was only a matter of time before it reached the university town. After hanging up, they transferred some money to me, assured me they were safe, and sent me a related guide. I immediately called back my 3 roommates who were out with the excuse of an urgent matter. Due to pandemic control, we could only move around on campus, so they returned quickly. Being peers and knowing a bit about my family, they accepted the news without much hesitation. After calling their families, we pooled our money and headed straight to the school supermarket. Before leaving, I posted a vague message in the class group chat. Given the serious pandemic, stock up on some food in the dormitory. I didn't dare reveal too much, fearing that if everyone knew we were prepared, it would bring trouble. This reminder was the most I could do. We blatantly skipped the afternoon classes. When we arrived at the supermarket, we didn't rush to the shelves, but instead found the manager. We persuaded him to let us take supplies directly from the warehouse under the pretense of organizing a club event. The school supermarket didn't have many varieties of items, and the stock was limited. The dorm wasn't big, and there was no refrigerator. We ordered 10 boxes of self-heating hot pot and rice products based on the dorm's capacity. 10 boxes of unknown canned food, as the supermarket manager said they were edible. 2 boxes of compressed biscuits, 2 boxes of sausages, 5 boxes of instant noodles, 3 boxes of chips, 2 boxes of beef jerky, pork jerky, dried fruit, and 2 boxes of chocolate. It wasn't that we didn't want to take more, but the school supermarket stock was limited. With food sorted, the next issue was water. After some discussion, we ordered 3 large drums for storing water for daily use. We also ordered 20 boxes of mineral water, 5 kettles, and 10 thermoses to ensure our drinking water supply. 5 boxes of toilet paper, 2 boxes of tissues. To save space, we paid extra for the staff to remove the paper cores. We also considered taking all the sanitary pads, but decided to leave some for other girls who might survive. Each of us bought 5 sets of basic living supplies: toothbrushes, toothpaste, face wash, slippers, laundry detergent, soap, shampoo, etc. We also took a box of garbage bags, a box of alcohol, and disinfectant. While in the warehouse, I found some blankets prepared for new students. Each of us took 3. We also bought about 10 hot water bottles in case of sudden cold weather. We then cleared out all the power banks and charging cables in stock, bought 10 flashlights and all the batteries. After placing the order, we asked the supermarket staff to deliver the goods to our dormitory during class time. Since we bought so much, the manager grew suspicious of our initial excuse, but we managed to laugh it off. Leaving the supermarket, it was still class time, so the building was mostly empty. We cleared out all the useless items in the room, leaving one person to wait for the delivery. The others went straight to the school clinic. We each found an excuse to take some painkillers, vitamins, and allergy medicine. Due to the pandemic, the school didn't prescribe any cold medicine, so we didn't even ask, relying on our existing supplies. We couldn't find any self-defense items or cooking tools as the school was too strict, so we had to give up. Before returning to the dorm, I followed my parents' guide to the cafeteria and asked for a bag of salt. It's useful for both disinfection and replenishing body salts. Now, only the electricity issue remained. In critical situations, there would surely be power and water outages. But the power banks wouldn't last long. After much thought, my roommate Tian came up with an idea. She knew a senior in the physics department who had once made her a mini solar panel as a gift. She wondered if he could help. Hearing this, I immediately asked her to contact the senior. We helped him sneak into the girls' dormitory and explain the situation briefly, urging him to stock up on supplies and not to spread the word. The senior was silent for a while. Just as I doubted he understood our urgency, he pulled out his phone to call his roommate and gave him some instructions. His roommate seemed to believe the story easily. The senior told us he could bring the solar panel shortly. It was a project from last semester, and they had ready-made ones. Hearing this good news, we finally breathed a sigh of relief. After organizing the delivered supplies, the solar panel arrived. But the senior wasn't alone. His roommate, Su Shi, was with him. I was a bit surprised to see Su Shi, a well-known figure in our school. Though handsome, we had no time to admire him. Su Shi and the senior got straight to work, inspecting our dormitory's layout and installing the solar panel in the corner of the balcony, checking the circuits. They taught us how to use the solar panel with various appliances and left us a spare one for emergencies. After ensuring everything was in order, they brought in some wooden boards from downstairs to reinforce our doors and windows. My roommate was puzzled. How did you get up here? After all, our dormitory ante was notoriously tough. Sushi calmly hammered the boards and said, "I said I came to fix my girlfriend's window." That worked. We didn't ask further and busied ourselves. Before they left, we gave them a box of instant noodles as a token of gratitude. In these times, nothing was more valuable than supplies. They thanked us and handed us some batons for self-defense. I was surprised. Aren't these regulated items? How did you get them? Sushi glanced at me indifferently. Boys, some have a bit of a hero complex. He didn't elaborate, but I understood. Some boys like collecting tools and weapons to show off. After dividing the loot, we wished each other safety and parted ways. With everything ready, we checked the doors and windows, then sat together silently, holding hands for comfort. We gathered and scrolled through our phones. As my parents predicted, within the 3 hours we were shopping, the zombie virus broke out in the city. Initially, there were videos spreading online. News of malicious attacks, rabies cases, and riots. My roommates, worried, tried to call their families. But the network was congested and paralyzed, making communication impossible. Soon, the internet stopped updating altogether. Sitting there, we turned our phones to silent, waiting for the world's judgment like condemned criminals. At 5:32 p.m., screams echoed through the campus. The source was initially from the cafeteria. I sensed something was wrong. Due to the pandemic, the campus was under closed management, so the outbreak should have started at the main gate. I quickly opened the side window's curtain to look outside. Our dormitory was near the gate, and I could see the activity at the entrance. The security booth was empty, with a pool of blood on the ground. The campus gate was ajar, like a beast ready to devour in the deepening dusk. We exchanged glances, relieved to have returned early, escaping the ordeal. Soon, chaos erupted outside the dormitory area, with people screaming and running. Zombies with ferocious faces chased them, biting into flesh. Inside the dormitory, there were thumping sounds of people running. Cries and pleas for help mixed into a cacophony. Suddenly, someone banged frantically on our door. We huddled in shock, not daring to make a sound. The dormitory doors were wooden, shaking under the pounding. Thankfully, Sushi had reinforced the door and fixed the lock earlier. Otherwise, it wouldn't have withstood the assault. We stood silently in the corner, watching the door. After a while, the banging stopped. We exhaled the breath we had been holding. "Those are zombies, right, Xing Sheng?" My roommate Wang Yue asked me, trembling. I nodded in response. "Should we let the people outside in to hide?" Another roommate, Zhou Rao, asked anxiously. "No. What if those things get attracted?" Xing Xing said they're sensitive to sound. Hearing their conversation, I frowned, sensing trouble. When I first informed them, Zhou Rao suggested reporting to the school. I stopped her then. Of course, I had thought about it, but my parents warned me not to play the hero. As a student, my words wouldn't be believed. Even if the school believed and locked down, there would always be a few disobedient ones. Like during the pandemic, some people who didn't follow the rules caused wider outbreaks. So, the first rule in the apocalypse is self-preservation. But Zhou Rao seemed like a ticking time bomb, ready to jeopardize us with her righteousness. In the chaos, I closely watched her. I needed a plan to deal with her, or she would endanger us all. The chaos outside lasted for hours before subsiding. We sat in the dormitory, listening to the occasional screams, shivering with fear. Late at night, we divided the night watch, taking turns in pairs for any emergencies. I volunteered to watch the first night with Tian Tian. Once Zhou Rao fell asleep, Tian and I tied her up and gagged her. She whimpered and struggled, eyes full of disbelief. She seemed to want to ask why we were doing this, but we ignored her, too exhausted to explain. Tian and I took turns watching through the night. July 1st, the first day after the zombie outbreak. The campus was eerily quiet in the morning. A familiar foggy day, with visibility no more than 3 meters. Only eerie figures moved slowly in the mist. I woke my roommates one by one. After we took turns washing up, I sat in front of Zhou Rao. I explained the pros and cons to her, not sure how much she understood. She cried and promised she wouldn't act on her own, asking us to untie her. I didn't agree. In the past, I would have trusted her, as we were dorm mates and got along well. But in the apocalypse, she could easily harbor resentment for our actions and endanger us. I decided it was safer to keep her tied up. We agreed to take turns caring for Zhou Rao's food and daily needs, not untying her for now. We believed it was better to be cautious than to risk our safety. To ensure Zhou Rao understood, we also scared her a bit, warning that any suspicious behavior would result in her being thrown out. Zhou Rao finally stopped whimpering and calmed down. After a night of reflection, the network congestion from yesterday's chaos seemed to have subsided. Although there was still some signal delay, the phone's communication functions were back, and that was enough. We each called our parents to report our safety. Thanks to timely communication, our families were all safe. Thinking about others, we felt a mix of emotions and chose not to mention it. The class group chat was buzzing with questions about my earlier message. My roommates helped cover for me, calming the situation for now. With communication restored, we constantly refreshed online news, hoping to wake up to normal life. But the official notices were repetitive. Stay indoors, await rescue. The internet was flooded with various comments, like a second chaotic world. I had asked my parents why they didn't warn everyone in advance if they knew about this. After a long silence, they explained, it happened too suddenly, and not everyone believes such things. Additionally, the human-induced chaos from such revelations could be worse than the disaster itself. If you can't be a hero, just take care of yourself. After hanging up, I pondered their words and deeply agreed. Indeed, I wasn't a hero or a savior. All I could do was take care of myself. 72 hours after the outbreak, the school lost power. With the solar panels, our daily electricity was stable. On the 5th day, perhaps due to a citywide power grid collapse, the water supply also stopped. Simultaneously, the internet signal was cut off. We thus lost contact with the outside world. But we had no time to dwell on it, as the temperature became extreme. This June had been unusually hot, reaching 40 degrees Celsius these past few days. We were drenched in sweat, suffering from the heat. The intense heat brought waves of stench from outside. But we kept the doors and windows tightly shut to avoid any potential diseases from the fall air. We couldn't risk turning on the air conditioner. Our dorm was on the 4th floor, neither high nor low. The AC unit was mounted on the side wall. Even if the solar panel could power the AC, the noise would definitely attract zombies below. And we suspected there were still survivors in the lower dorms. We already felt guilty for not being able to warn everyone. Now, we couldn't risk others' safety for our comfort. So we lay on the floor around the dorm's only small fan, forming a circle. On the 15th day after the outbreak, people started searching for food as their supplies ran out. The balconies of the dorms were only a step apart, with only the 1st and 2nd floors having railings. Some brave boys in the opposite dorms started climbing balconies. Without any signals, everyone reverted to primitive survival, attracting the attention of nearby dorms. We observed them through a crack in our curtains. They climbed from one balcony to another, cautiously checking for occupants. If there were people, they moved on. If not, they entered to scavenge. Soon, others followed suit, but only in the boys' dorms. This showed that girls were relatively conservative. The boys' dorms turned into a playground for Spider-Man wannabes. Some climbed barehanded, while others used bedsheets tied by their roommates. But horizontal dorms were limited, leading to conflicts. Two groups argued over supplies, causing a commotion. Zombies were attracted by the noise. I saw one boy push his roommate towards the zombies to escape, a stark display of humanity in the apocalypse. We stopped watching and closed the curtains, feeling a heavy silence. After composing ourselves, we used the leftover wooden boards to seal off the balcony gap between our dorm and the next. On the 20th day after the virus outbreak, after several days of intense heat, the weather shifted to continuous rain. Though it cooled down, the solar panels' stored power dwindled. We had to reduce our electricity usage until the rain stopped. A month after the outbreak, the supplies for 4 people began to dwindle. In theory, what remained could last a long time. But the future was uncertain. On the 32nd day, we indulged by taking turns wiping ourselves with water, pretending it was a bath. On the 33rd day, people started jumping to their deaths. On the 34th day, a riot broke out in the dorm opposite, and everyone fled to our dorm buildings. The number of survivors dwindled. On the 35th day, we discovered a new way to communicate: Bluetooth. It started when Tian saw familiar faces in the boys' dorm opposite while washing up on the balcony. In the second room on the 5th floor, slightly to the left, were Wang Jin and Sushi. They waved and gestured at us. We were puzzled and couldn't understand. They went back in and came out with 2 signs, each with a big character: blue and tooth. We instantly understood and quickly searched our phones. When we turned on Bluetooth, we found many connections nearby. Sushi's was easy to recognize, labeled with their room number. We connected and started communicating via Bluetooth. Sushi said they had only 3 people left. Another roommate didn't believe them and stayed in the cafeteria. I felt a pang of regret. It was hard for anyone to believe such news. Fortunately, all 4 of us were together. Meeting familiar faces in the apocalypse, we shared survival tips and improved our resource usage plans. Bluetooth communication revived the campus, filling it with life. People exchanged supplies through Bluetooth. We joined in, always giving slightly more in return, while maintaining our rule of not revealing our resources. On the 42nd day, Zhou Rao excitedly said her boyfriend got a car and could take us with him if we gave him our supplies. The request seemed reasonable, but it made me laugh out of anger. "You told your boyfriend about our situation?" Zhou Rao looked confused. "I can't tell him." Telling her boyfriend was fine. Everyone had their own choices. But it was different with Zhou Rao. It wasn't that I was biased against her. Her boyfriend, He Lian, was a player. We once saw him with another girl in the cafeteria. We told Zhou Rao, but she didn't believe us and trusted He Lian's lame excuses. Seeing her deluded state, we stopped trying to convince her. I sighed and firmly told Zhou Rao, "You can leave with him. We won't stop you. You can take your share of supplies. But you have to move your supplies yourself, and we won't open the door for you. Figure it out yourself. We have no obligation or desire to risk our safety for your choice or love. Do you understand?" Zhou Rao looked dazed, as if she didn't. So she asked He Lian's opinion. I don't know what he told her, but she decided to go with him. I was exasperated. Seeing we couldn't persuade her, we packed her share of supplies the next day, which amounted to several large boxes. That night, He Lian said he would pick her up and told her to lower the supplies from the window with a rope. They used a drone with a loudspeaker to lure away the zombies, then drove the car to the dorm, repeating the trick to ensure safety before unloading the supplies. I was impressed by He Lian's intelligence despite his scumbag nature. After moving the supplies, Zhou Rao was hesitant. She didn't dare go downstairs, fearing the zombies in the corridor. He Lian didn't want to come inside either, telling her to climb down the rope. Zhou Rao cried, saying she was scared. This back and forth seemed to give He Lian an excuse. He coldly told her, "Come or don't," and left with her supplies and his buddies without looking back. Zhou Rao stood there, dumbfounded. She looked at us, hoping for comfort, but we just watched coldly. "You vào panic?" She wasn't inherently bad, just a naive student. Realizing she had lost her supplies and our trust, she finally understood. She stifled her tears, red-eyed, and pointed to the wall. I'll go to the next room. Can you give me some water and food? Just a little." Seeing her like this, I softened. I sighed, patted her back, and she looked at me, bewildered. Then she broke down, sobbing against my shoulder, apologizing for trusting He Lian. I pulled her away, smiling. "It's okay. No big deal." Tian and Wang Yue also comforted her. "It's fine. Just know He Lian is trash." "But what about the supplies?" Zhou Rao asked, sniffling. Her innocent question made us laugh. I patted her head, smiling. I anticipated this. Those boxes were filled with trash. Why do you think I sealed them with tape? Zhou Rao blinked, then laughed, realizing the trick. Her smile was as bright as when we first moved into the dorm. That night, we hugged tightly, and Zhou Rao was back with us. The incident with He Lian was like a switch, ending all troubles. We didn't tie up Zhou Rao anymore, but she jokingly asked us to, fearing her saint syndrome. We obliged, tying her up again, laughing at her confused expression. Our days were orderly and lively. We played cards and chatted with Sushi's dorm. Our school had about 50,000 students. There were over 20 dorm buildings in the north area alone. I didn't know how many survivors were left, but everyone was striving to survive. I often saw people using drones to lure away zombies and climb down balconies to scavenge supplies. The drone became a familiar sight, like an old employee. Sushi said they considered using the drone to clear a building but gave up due to the overwhelming number of zombies. Time passed, and survivors dwindled. Besides those killed by zombies, most jumped to their deaths. The atmosphere was heavy, so we stopped looking outside. By November, the weather became even more erratic, with extreme temperature variations. Except for me, my roommates all caught colds. I felt uneasy, sensing something was wrong. I heated hot water bottles for them, tucked them in, and decided to play some phone games. Just then, Sushi's Bluetooth connected. I accepted, and he sent me a photo of a notebook. It said to turn on my phone's network and check official news. My heart sank, and I quickly turned it on. After months of no signal, nothing happened. Then, a message popped up, a text from the authorities. I was overjoyed, but the content brought me back to reality. The message said, due to abnormal weather, a cold wave is approaching, causing zombies to migrate south, forming a zombie tide. The government has established a safe base in the South China Sea. If any survivors see this, please move to the South China Sea immediately. The message also listed rescue zones. I checked carefully, but didn't find our city's name. I woke my roommates to discuss. Initially, I didn't understand the urgency. We were safe in our dorm. Why risk going out? But then I received an official video. It showed hordes of zombies piling up, forming a massive creature, each step causing tremors. It reminded me of the wall scene from World War Z. I don't know how they filmed it, but the zombie tide would reach us in less than 10 days. So, we had to leave. That night, we discussed with Sushi's group. We decided to gather as many survivors as possible, but we could only contact about 10 people and only 4 chose to join us. With 11 people, transport was a big problem. Sushi reassured us, telling us to pack and wait for him the next morning. Others were skeptical, but we trusted him, having been helped by them before. We barely slept, knowing we had to leave our safe haven. The next morning, the familiar drone with its loudspeaker appeared. We started lowering the supplies with ropes. Before we finished, a school bus drove up the path. I was speechless, feeling like we were playing a game with paid advantages. As zombies were lured away again, Sushi, Wang Jin, and their roommate Songzi got off the bus. They locked the nearby dorms from the outside to prevent zombies from escaping. The 3 other boys slid down from their balconies using bedsheet ropes. One chubby boy almost tore his rope halfway down. While they loaded the bus, we started sliding down too. Surprisingly, Zhou Rao, who cried last time, bravely slid down this time. I comforted her, suddenly finding her teary but determined look cute. Once everything was loaded, we all got on the bus. As the doors closed, we looked back at our dorms one last time. Leaving felt bittersweet, not knowing when we'd return. Then I had a sudden thought. Sushi, do you have a driving license? Everyone paused, looking at Sushi. He was momentarily stunned. I do, but it's a C1. Bear with it. No one else can drive. How did you get this bus? We borrowed it from the student council for a camping trip before the outbreak. Then the zombies came, and we couldn't return it. That works. Whether it worked or not, we set off. Our bus moved forward, while the drone, controlled by Songziyu, went in the opposite direction, providing one last safeguard. We used offline maps to navigate to the safety zones. It was a 14-hour drive via highway, not far, but the highway was likely clogged. So we took the national road. With limited speed and only Sushi driving, the journey time extended. We estimated 3 days to reach the destination. Leaving the city, we tried to find remote gas stations for fuel. But reality hit hard. The stations were swarming with zombies, mocking our naivety. We quickly drove away. Luckily, we found another station soon after. This one had only one zombie in employee uniform. The boys didn't let us get out. We sensibly stayed in the bus, not causing trouble. They smashed the zombie's head and brought back enough fuel. We continued, hoping this journey wouldn't be in vain. We drove for 13 hours. Passing through towns, we encountered a few zombies. Elsewhere, it felt like a scenic trip. After a while, we decided to stop and rest. We stayed in the bus, sharing food. Everyone let Sushi rest comfortably in the back seat. The rest of us found spots to sleep, getting some rest. Despite the cold night, we cracked the sunroof to avoid suffocation. We girls huddled together for warmth. We spent the first night outside safely. We thought the journey would remain smooth. But the next day, passing a town, a spiked strip punctured our tires. The sudden break threw everyone around, and zombies closed in. We can't stay in the bus. We'll be trapped. In the chaos, someone shouted. Sushi quickly opened the door. There's a shop 100 meters ahead. Let's hide there. We rushed out, supporting each other, running towards the shop. I've never felt such a life or death rush. My scalp tingled, legs heavy as lead. Zombies closed in. Seeing one lunging at me, I thought it was over. In a flash, a leg kicked the zombie away. It was Wang Jin. I gave him a grateful glance and continued running with the group. Reaching the shop, the front runners stopped, stunned. 2 zombies emerged from inside. The leading pair froze in fear. I cursed, scanning around. I grabbed a shovel by the door and swung at the approaching zombie's head. Its blood splattered on me. I didn't hesitate, turning to the second zombie and hitting it again. Lacking strength, I hit it once more. As I bashed, I shouted, "Snap out of it. Help me." They snapped out of it, grabbing tools to fight the zombies with me. We pushed the zombies out, making way for the others to enter. Sushi stayed behind, kicking away zombies trying to grab him. My heart was in my throat. Finally, the last person ran in. We leaned against the door, waiting for Sushi to enter and close it. I reached out to grab him. He handed me something instead. Then, he pushed the door from outside, pulling down the outer gate. I was incredulous. "Sushi, what are you doing?" He smiled, facing the approaching zombies, raising his left hand. A deep bite mark, skin torn, black blood oozing. In that moment, everything was clear. He'd been bitten. Reality gave no time to react. I watched helplessly as zombies swarmed him, pressing him against the gate. Despite the pain, he still smiled. The once praised school hero now smiled gently. He shouted, "Li Xingsheng, if you reach the South China Sea and meet a girl named Lin Shu from Xi'an, give her that and tell her not to wait for me." He pointed to my hand. I realized I was holding a ring. A simple, modest ring, affordable for a student. I choked back tears, nodding silently. Seeing my response, he smiled contentedly, taking 2 steps back. He vanished into the zombie horde. We lost our transport and food. Everyone was somber, mourning sushi. I wore the ring on a chain around my neck, clutching it, wishing for our safety, hoping to meet Lin Shu and give her the ring. We stayed in that town for 2 days. On the second night, zombies gathered and migrated south. We seized the chance to retrieve some of our supplies. Just in time, another wave of zombies appeared soon after. Our anxiety grew, sensing the zombie migration. Though we were already far south, where were they heading? On the third day, a car passed through. It was our biggest hope, showing others were heading this way. This car, like ours, hit the spikes, screeching to a stop. People, men and women, got out, luckier than us, with only a few zombies left in town. Initially, we wanted to invite them in, hoping they'd take us. But seeing their guns, we hesitated. They looked tough, exuding a dangerous aura. They skillfully fought the zombies, quickly smashing their heads. They moved swiftly, searching the town and finding our bus, taking the supplies we left. We watched from the window, the boys getting anxious, but we urged caution. These people look dangerous. It's better to let the supplies go. The words deflated our spirits, but it was the safest choice. To our surprise, the group didn't leave us alone. They found our hiding spot and approached. The leader, a tall man with a buzz cut, exuded a cold aura. He knocked on the iron door, not loudly, but each knock made us nervous. No one spoke. I gathered my courage. "What do you want?" The man hesitated, hearing a girl's voice, then said, "There's no other shelter. Can we stay for the night?" I was skeptical, fearing they wanted our supplies. I tried to be polite, saying, "We don't have enough space for so many people. Maybe you can stay in your car for the night." There was no response from outside. After a while, it was quiet again. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking they had left. I urged everyone to rest, planning to search for a vehicle the next day. We couldn't stay idle any longer. My roommates comforted me, and I went to the corner to sleep. I must have been too tired because I fell asleep leaning against the wall. In the middle of the night, a loud bang startled me awake. I instinctively looked towards the noise. The group from earlier had returned and forcefully pried open the door. They entered with flashlights, the bright lights blinding us. We stayed still, watching their movements. The leader, holding a flashlight, scanned the room, seemingly looking for someone. He approached my corner and crouched down to meet my eyes. Up close, he was extremely handsome, with sharp features and piercing eyes. Though good-looking, his intense aura made him seem dangerous. He studied me for a while, then asked, "Are you the leader here?" I couldn't gauge his intentions but nodded. He asked again, "Were you the one who refused us entry?" I was scared but stayed calm, answering, "Yes." I wanted to see what he was up to. He and I locked eyes for a long time, neither of us looking away. The tension was palpable, with the boys in our group ready to defend us. Just when we thought a fight was inevitable, the man suddenly smiled. His expression softened, making him look more approachable. He pulled out something resembling an ID and said seriously, "I'm Chu Fengsheng, captain of the 2nd Rescue Team." The news was so unexpected that my mind went blank. I stared at his ID, unable to tell if I was dreaming. Was this nightmare finally ending? Chu Fengsheng's arrival filled us with hope. Unlike our earlier fears, knowing they were soldiers made us feel safe and reassured. We playfully complained about the scare they gave us. Chu Fengsheng explained that in the chaos of the apocalypse, lawlessness was rampant, and bandits were common. Some even used women to lure in vehicles, exploiting sympathy to rob them. So when he looked at me, Li Shengsheng spoke, "I thought you might be one of those groups." I didn't expect brave college students. His unexpected praise made Wang Jin and the others blush with embarrassment. We all laughed, feeling a rare moment of joy. I was about to return to my corner when Chu Fengsheng stopped me. His serious expression made me nervous. What's wrong? You did the right thing." "What?" I said, "You did the right thing not letting us in. In these times, you can't trust people easily." I was confused but then understood, smiling. "Is that what a soldier should say?" "Soldier." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, don't we call police and soldiers officers?" He seemed to consider it, then nodded. "Officer or not, I'm fine with it." The next morning, Chu Fengsheng's team fixed the tire and invited us to join them. After 10 more hours on the road, we arrived at a checkpoint. Chu Fengsheng and his team had other rescue missions. After a brief farewell, they left. Getting off the bus, the sight before us was overwhelming. It was orderly, bustling with people, a stark contrast to the apocalypse. We were taken for testing and, after a 7-day quarantine, boarded a ship to the South China Sea base. Disembarking, I spotted my parents waiting. I ran to them, embracing them tightly, crying uncontrollably. Months of fear and hardship poured out in my tears. At the base, we were assigned housing and followed the organized routines. A month later, I found Lin Shu, gave her Sushi's message and the ring. She cried, thanking me. We parted ways, and I didn't see her again. Life in the South China Sea base resumed normalcy. 6 months later, the entire island erupted in cheers. We were huddled together, knowing it was because a vaccine was developed. A year later, all zombies were eradicated. We were brought back to the mainland. Though our homes were in ruins, everyone was excited about rebuilding. Another year passed. The school was rebuilt, and my roommates and I became dorm mates again. We joked about tying up Zhou Rao, laughing together. We studied, graduated, found jobs, fell in love, and got married. Life was happy and fulfilling. The experience of that year became an unforgettable lesson. Oh, and by the way, my boyfriend's last name is Chu, and his name is Chu Fengsheng. He's the one who carried the burden for us during those dark times.